Hi everybody and welcome back to Astro Kara. This is Kara. I'm here today to talk to you about this Aquarius full moon. We've got a lot of energy happening. We've had a lot of energy shifts this last couple weeks, and I am sure that you are feeling it on some level. I know I have. I've had some big changes in my own life, and so I know that I've also been talking to clients and friends and seeing it in the collective that there's just a lot going on. So I'm hopefully going to be able to bring you some maybe clarity, some validation for what you've been feeling, and hopefully give you some concepts and ideas on how to navigate these energies. So let's talk about the lunation first. The overall purpose or opportunity that we have for this lunation is to focus on self-actualization. And it's stepping into your authenticity a little further. And I want to define these words for us because I feel like we hear them, they're thrown around, on memes and in lectures and in podcasts and videos such as this. And, what does that actually mean? So the definition of self-actualization is the realization or fulfillment of one's talents and potentialities, especially considered as a drive or need present in everyone. A need present in everyone. So we all have this need to self-actualize. Whether or not we take the steps to do it, of course, is our choice. It's the power of our own choices. So there's a few definitions of authentic, and I really like them all. Of undisputed origin, genuine. Made or done in an original way, based on facts, accurate and reliable. And then from the philosophical definition, relating to or denoting an emotionally appropriate, significant, purposive, and responsible mode of human life. Emotionally appropriate, significant, purposeful, responsible mode of human life. So when I say that the opportunity here is for us to step into our authenticity a little further, to help you push past previous limitations and barriers. And this push specifically is stepping away from people-pleasing and stepping into your own boundaries without guilt or shame. Or let me rephrase it, stepping into your boundaries and managing your guilt and shame, because it'll come up when you're first choosing yourself. It's an opportunity to look at, observe, recognize, and become aware of the perspectives that you hold and the lens through which you see the world, to make any adjustments in order to align your perspective to your own sense of self and your own sense of value and the values you choose to make your lifestyle from. It's here to help you recognize that you are innately worthy of your own unique expression. You are not worthy of rejection or alienation, despite what you may have been taught in the past or what you may have experienced in the past. And I know these wonderful concepts are simple to say, but the work can be extremely difficult. And moving through these energies may be quite uncomfortable, even painful at times. But breakthroughs are coming. And the breakthroughs come when you give yourself permission and embrace your own courage long enough to move outside the box that you've been put in. So that's the overview. Now let's get into the details. In many spiritual circles, I've heard the moon described as a period of culmination or ending. It's the fullness or completion. But in evolutionary astrology, we don't look at the full moon this way. Whenever I am looking at two planets or luminaries in this case that are in what's called an aspect to one another, they are having a sort of conversation. We start with the new phase conjunction or where they were together in the sky. So this for the sun and moon would be at the most recent new moon. It's a time of seeding, it's a time of planting, it's a time of setting new intentions. And it's often called the dark moon because, as we know, the moon has no light source of its own and only reflects the light of the sun. So when they're together in the sky, that no light is being reflected. And it's the darkness under the soil that the idea has been planted in. So whatever intentions, ideas, habits that you may have planted at this most recent new moon, you're now beginning to see little sprouts of those ideas. It's being reflected to you that there's new life. Sometimes you have to look a little closer, but it's there. So I do not interpret a full moon as a completion. The opposition aspect is actually only halfway through the cycle. We don't reach the end of the cycle until almost the beginning of the new cycle or the next new moon. And so I'll talk about that in a moment. But I want to start with this understanding of the archetypes that the sun and the moon are in. The sun is currently in Leo, highlighting for us our sense of special destiny and purpose. The moon in Aquarius is reflecting that and asking you now to begin to break out of those patterns of behavior that have been associated with masking, hiding, or compartmentalizing these parts of yourself. What do you find most special and unique about yourself? Where do you find most joy and creativity? How do you connect to your inner child and to play? And if these are things that you have not been able to accomplish or connect to in recent times because you've been so stressed and overwhelmed and you can't even think about connecting to those concepts and those ideas, this is an opportunity for you to slow down and try to do that. One of the things that I like to discuss when I'm talking about this polarity, the polarity of Leo and Aquarius, is representative of Leo being our heart center, and Aquarius being our mind. Now, it's the higher mind, where Mercury is more on the earthly plane, our physical mental space. But it still connects to the brain, because those Uranian ideas, those Aquarian concepts and breakthroughs that come to us suddenly, and they come to us often in our mind. And so thinking about this polarity and this axis that the sun and the moon are in right now, I think about the mind and the heart. And there is this concept called heart-mind coherence. I actually did a talk on this for the EA Zoom platform here on YouTube. You can go check that out. I'll link it in the description box where I go into it a little bit more deeply. But the idea of heart-mind coherence, I believe it comes from Greg Braden. It's simply a matter of connecting your mental space and your heart space. And it's so often that we are stuck in our mental space. And even though we have emotions that come up and we feel them in our body and we feel the triggers and we react to all the things that are physiologically and emotionally happening within us, we tend to disconnect from that. Or we spend too much time in our heart and in our emotions, and we don't think through ways of changing those patterns and behaviors. So one of the most simple ways to reconnect your heart and mind is gratitude. Sure, it's easy enough to say, but when you are feeling overwhelmed and depressed and stressed out, you're like, what in the world do I have to be thankful for? My rent's too high. I can't pay my light bill. They're going to repossess my car because I can't, but I got to get to work. I have to have the car to get to work. It's just craziness sometimes. And I don't want to bypass that. I understand. Something as simple as just being thankful for your breath can help put you in a mind state of gratitude. Something that is within you. It doesn't require anything external to be happening or not happening for you to still feel the gratitude. Take a moment and be thankful. And as you express gratitude in your mental space, begin to feel it in your heart space. And as you breathe in and out, continue to say thank you. Let's move on to this idea of the opposition being a halfway point rather than a completion. Evolutionary astrology is based on the archetypal language, And how I read charts is by pulling out the layers and making the connections and then describing them. So the opposition aspect is that of the Libra archetype. Contained within this is the idea of imbalance or misalignment, and it's often experienced as extremes. Where have you found yourself recently vacillating between being fully yourself and needing to hide those innermost parts in order to feel accepted by others? The repeating theme here is pointing to the recent nodal shift. We are now in the signs of Libra and Aries, and we will continue this energy for the next 18 months. Do please give yourself permission to take these changes slowly and allow time to integrate them. In a birth chart, Pluto represents the soul and its desires, the reason the soul chose to incarnate and have this human experience. It translates to experiences, challenges, and complex that you will go through on your path to empowerment. And the lunar nodes are also a part of your karmic pathway. In your birth chart, it indicates where your soul is coming from and the environment in which you were shaped. And then it extends toward the arc of the unfamiliar, where your soul is trying to move. So in a transit chart, such as a full moon or new moon chart, looking at Pluto in the nodes is focusing on the collective karmic pathway that then extends to you individually. So Pluto remains in the sign of Capricorn in a square to these lunar nodes. This energy's been going on for most of this year, but what is new is that the nodes have shifted. We've left the polarity of Taurus and Scorpio and moved into, like I said, Aries Libra. So experiences that are coming up for you regarding this Aries Libra axis have everything to do with how you relate. How you relate to yourself and how you relate to others. How you show up for yourself, as yourself, when you're being mirrored and given feedback from others. And how do you mirror and give feedback to those around you? Where do you tend to project your own emotional complexes on others or into situations? Moving through these challenges will feel uncomfortable and, like I said, painful at times even. Remembering to give yourself compassion, grace, and space will help you move through these energies with a deeper sense of self-awareness. One of the things that I see and feel as this square to the nodes is happening is that it's helping us and asking us to reflect on our past conditioning, our upbringing, indoctrination, molding. So as I said before, the Sun in Leo is highlighting to you the things that you find special about yourself. Where have you had to hide your light? Where has it been completely extinguished? And where might you find a new spark? So this thing that I call conditioning is that any time you had to put those parts of yourself away to be accepted, anytime you had to hide your own light or completely put it out, because you were taught that it was no good, not worthy, not lovable. There's a pressure here now to let go of the attachment to that past self, that past life, to those past patterns of behavior and coping mechanisms that made you believe that those parts of yourself were unacceptable. You are being asked now to look again at those parts and somehow find a new way to connect to them. A new spark of life. We have several planets currently in retrograde, including one of our personal planets, Venus. And I've been talking about Venus a lot this year. I've actually called 2023 the year of Venus because there's so much connected to her and her movements. And this is no different. She's also in the sign of Leo, pointing back to how do you value those special things about you, the things that make you unique and different. Do you place true value on them? Do you hold them as important and move in your life aligned to those values. Anytime we have a retrograde period, it is a time of inner reflection. It's an opportunity for you to really dig into yourself, but it's also a time of accelerated evolution where you may feel an additional pressure and with that, some resistance to the change. So when I think of the idea of resistance, the word impedance comes to mind as well. Similar topic, but different concepts. And as I understand it, which is very limited, in the idea of an electrical circuit, resistance is an opposing friction or force that goes against the flow. Impedance is more internal, a sum of parts that are within the circuit that actually slow the flow. Resistance or impedance both somehow slow the flow of the circuit. So when I think about these concepts, it came to me because I'm looking at the current Venus retrograde in a finger of God or yod formation to Neptune retrograde in Pisces and Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. Anytime we have a yod or yod formation or aspect in a chart, it is a period of crisis and adjustment. It is where there are things that are being shown to you or things that come to your awareness that need to be recognized and adjustments made. The axis point or the focus point is this Venus retrograde in Leo. What I was saying about recognizing and valuing those things about yourself that are special and different, that in the past you've had to mask or hide away. So I bring in the resistance and impedance because the aspects of the yod are, as I mentioned before, the layering of EA, a Virgo archetype and a Scorpio archetype. The Scorpio archetype in this instance is the resistance. It's the outside, external, opposing friction that comes into your life that shows you need to make a change. Either that's a blockage or something's being removed or someone is just showing you, hey, you can't go any further here. Impedance is more internal, and that's more of the Virgo archetype, where you're recognizing something within yourself, those patterns, those thought beliefs, those thought patterns, those belief systems that are internal that become part of what I call your mind chatter. You're recognizing them, and it's slowing your flow. So now I think about another way to experience resistance. A rubber band, or the exercise bands that stretch, those resistance bands. And the harder you stretch them, the further you stretch them out, right? That's the greater the pressure, the greater the resistance. But remember, whenever you're beginning to feel those limitations, feeling the resistance creates that pressure. And as you have that greater pressure, when you release it, it has greater impact. Talking about the Virgo archetype, we have Mercury and Mars, both in the sign of Virgo currently. Mars has already passed the opposition point to Saturn retrograde in Pisces. And at this lunation, Mercury is in that place. So let's talk about these archetypes for a little while and what those mean. So if you remember, that opposition adds in the Libra archetype energy. And with that, I'm using here the idea of imbalance or misalignment. So Saturn through Pisces is helping us to see things as they are, not necessarily for how we want them to be or how we've been conditioned for them to be. Saturn also brings with it emotional maturity. And in the sign of Pisces, it's helping us to heal from the overly forceful authority of the patriarchy in society, in family, and also helping us to heal from emotionally unavailable people. This comes with a lot of self-forgiveness and self-compassion. Mercury is, like I said, in the sign of Virgo, and it's slowing down to station retrograde toward the end of August. In this opposition, it's representing that imbalance or misalignment between your own inner authority and where you have got caught up in the mental spin. This aspect feels to me like the misalignment of authenticity versus being emotionally stoic and getting caught up in the emotional mental spin, over-analyzing the automatic negative thoughts of guilt and shame when you attempt to create boundaries for yourself. And the evolution or integration of these energies includes that self-forgiveness and self-compassion, reminding yourself that perfection is a myth, and when being human and being perfect cannot coexist. When these feelings come up, it will be important for you to remind yourself that you do not have to feel guilty or shame for not being quote-unquote good enough. Accepting your own limitations, the limitations that you're meant to push through, are there to help you build emotional resiliency muscles. So I want to end with one of the biggest aspects that I'm seeing in this lunation chart, and that is Jupiter is in a square to the sun and the moon. It creates what was called a T-square, and Jupiter is the focus. So the relationship between these planets in evolutionary astrology is called the crisis in consciousness or crisis in belief. And it just so happens that Jupiter represents belief, hope, expanding your mind. But before you can embrace these concepts, you must first look at the perspective that shaped you, the lens through which you see the world. This is based on your personality, your likes and dislikes, but oftentimes it's based on what you've been taught by family, culture, society, media, religion, friends. And now it's time to look at and determine if those values, if those perspectives still fit you. Do you still fit in the box that's created by those belief patterns? This is an opportunity for you to review and realign. The work happens when you make a choice to begin to change your behaviors, to practice a pause before you react to a trigger, become aware of the background mind chatter. Are you responding in a certain way because you think that that's what other people expect of you? How you're supposed to behave? Or are you offering your own experience and opinion based on how you see the world now? Mars in Virgo is in a trine to Jupiter in Taurus. This is supportive of this new direction. This is supportive of taking initiative to do things one step at a time based on how you see yourself now. All these new belief patterns that are coming out and this realignment to how you value yourself and how you want to set up yourself to live your own life. And it takes courage. It takes courage to step away from the known. It takes courage to step outside of the group, family, whatever dynamics that you're in, that you're showing up being different, maybe being alienated or misunderstood. And it's difficult and sometimes painful because we want and need those connections. This is also an opportunity for you to step away or maybe completely let go of certain relationships that are no longer serving your growth. You will begin to attract the people in your life that you need, that will support you if you begin to step into your own authenticity. There is often a sort of deconstruction that needs to take place before you can begin rebuilding. And this project oftentimes needs to go to the foundation to be completely restructured. Sometimes it's a weekend warrior or DIY project, but oftentimes it takes time. I do want to talk about a couple things that I offer here that I think might be able to help. As a part of the transformational astrology that I do, we can take a look at your karmic pathway, your essential needs, or focus on something more specific for you. Those are limited in the time frame that we have to get into the depths of what are happening, but we absolutely can do those. I have 30-minute sessions and 1-hour sessions. I also want to talk about the Catalyst program that I am launching today at this full moon. It's a program designed to help you work through those emotional complexes, to understand your emotional and relational needs, and create some habits, break some others, and build your own emotional resiliency. As always, I offer free consultations where we can just have a chat to see if this is the right thing for you. And you can find that over at astrokara.com. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, take care of you.